Um, for the first half hour or so, we have 4 presenters that will be sharing their ideas and some slides. And then we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes for a discussion, and we're going to break out into smaller groups. Please remain on mute until the discussion portion of the presentation. And it's best to switch to speaker view if you're not already on speaker view. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the presentation. So this is Building Community in a Virtual Classroom. And our presenters today are Anne Carlyle, and she is wait, hold on, I can't see my whole screen here. She is a lecturer and supervisor at UCSB and has been a teacher for more than 40 years. Let's just move on. I'll do quick introductions. And Laura Gold is a lecturer and supervisor at UCI, was a teacher for over 20 years, and also she teaches our UDL class. And Derek Boyd is a supervisor at UC Berkeley, and he's been a teacher for over 10 years and has been the Dean of Students. And Amy George, a multiple subject 6th grade teacher in Davis Joint Unified, and has mentored many, many teachers over her 15 years. Okay, and the learning outcomes we hope this group hopes to achieve today is to explore the unique role of supervisor during the pandemic and the racial justice movement, to offer ideas for building community with candidates, families, and students, and to share as a supervisor community. Okay, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Like everybody else, first of all, thank you, Virginia, and thank you to my co-presenters today, Anne, Amy, and Derek. Everybody's been so responsive and just jumped in, which I think is the hallmark of everybody during the pandemic. As I went into this presentation, I know so many people have been thinking about how do we support candidates, students, and mentor teachers and families during this period of time. And 2 things kept swirling through my brain. First of all, I have to thank all the UCI candidates last year. They were incredibly brave, and their sharing during the capstone project was really, really inspirational to me. And then the other thing that's been swirling through my brain, believe it or not, is the hip hop musical Hamilton. And I thought about Hamilton so much because I'm sure most of you are familiar. At the beginning of the show, there's a 30-minute buildup before we meet the character of George Washington. And the reason I think about that is so much that leadership that we're trying to provide and we're trying to support in our candidates. And Washington's first lines to me are really important during this period of time. And his first lines in the musical are, "Can I be real a second for just a millisecond? Can I let down my guard and tell the people what I feel a second?" To me, that's all about the supervision learning experience right now. And so what I want to open up with my candidates about is 2020, 2021 is not about those traditional R's. It's about a whole different set. So kind of as an overview to our presentation, and Anne and Amy and Derek will take it deeper, but I want to talk about a different set of R's that we need to be thinking about. The first one is to be real. This is stressful. This is incredible. And we do not do our candidates or our students or our families any help by not being real with them and allowing them to be the same with us. The next thing is I want to keep in my mind that candidates and their students have the right to experiment, to fail, to succeed. That is what equitable access to me is about. It's supported by the law and by our TPEs. And then number 3, of course, is the relationships. We need to get to know our students deeply. We need to get to know our candidates deeply. And Anne is going to share some wonderful things with you And it's important for me to also say, I feel like we want to build on students' assets and all the learning that they've done in the pandemic. And I want to push aside this idea of they need to catch up or they're behind. I think we need to talk and be real about resources. We have to understand the learning spaces that both our candidates and their students and families are involved in. We need to address technology and material needs. We've attached, and the four of us have been building a Google Doc that will be part of your resources about different ideas that we have about community building. Amy is going to take us really deeply into rituals and routines, celebration circles, check-ins, gatherings, and how to build consistent patterns and norms that children, even in the midst of all the mijigas around them, can really latch onto and feel secure in. Derek is really going to go deeply with us about how to reach out and be responsive, how to give the equitable time, attention, feedback to families and to kids. Some candidate may need more time with you, another candidate less. Some children may be okay in a small group setting or even the whole class Zoom situation, and some children may need to confer. We just need to be present and responsive on all those levels. Number 8, one of the things I took away from our UCI candidates was the idea at the beginning when they were in their student teaching mode online or remotely, there was too much busy work happening for their students, too much sort of meaningless activity. And so we really want to support our candidates in developing rigorous but meaningful and purposeful assignments, things with options for completion. Virginia mentioned UDL, and I want to really use that universal design principle to help candidates think about, can their student respond on Flipgrid? Can they create a Google slide deck? Can they call the teacher and talk about their response? How can we emphasize quality over quantity and a real humanity to what we're doing? Finally, we need rest and we need reflection. We all do. And I want to encourage my candidates to take that time for themselves. Thank you all very much. And with that, I would love to hand the virtual mic over to Anne.
Thank you. And would you just be on hand to advance the slides, Laura?
I will be your tech person.
Okay, thank you. So I'm thinking about what I want to do is talk a little bit about how I spent time building my community with my candidates. And the first thing I did when I first got to know them is I shared who I was.
Okay. Anne, do you want me to move to the next slide? Uh-oh.
Okay. I told them who I was, and mostly I told stories about my teaching. I was a kindergarten teacher. I spent a lot of time with hands-on learning with the kids. We raised chickens. When we learned the life cycle, we did polywogs. We had a garden, all of those kinds of things, because I wanted them to know what I valued as a teacher. And so I wrote an essay about that. And then I shared that with them, and we made a worded out from my words. And we were able to look, this isn't it, this is just a sample, but we were able to look see which words were really important. Then the candidates did the same thing, and they made a worded out and a word cloud. And we were able to talk about and share our thoughts of who we were, what we valued as teachers. Because in my essay, I was talking about how can I, as a teacher, teach with a screen when I'm used to teaching with patter blocks, and children are playing on the floor, building things. So that conversation was the beginning of a series of conversations that we had with our small group. Next. Okay. So there's the worded out. There are other word cloud too. So that's one of resource. And then another thing I did was I wanted to inspire a project that was purposeful and personal. And this was one of the early projects that we did with with my candidates. Next. It's a Google slide. And here's a sample from one of my candidates. What she did was, this was in March. Her kids in kindergarten were missing school. She created a virtual classroom. And in the classroom, she had the little monkey, and she had the elephant. She had a calendar. She had the whiteboard. She had the video screen. She had a little welcome message. She had a field trip to the Monterey Aquarium. She had Swimmy the fish that she was reading. And all of these places on the whiteboard were clickable, and so the kids could go there and experience this wonderful classroom because they missed it, and they missed her. She did another one. Here's the next one. This was a move-a-thon. The whole school had their fundraiser, the big fundraiser, the jog-a-thon, but they didn't have it that year. They had a virtual move-a-thon instead. So they had put a video together of the faculty doing a workout. They had kindergartens, children doing warm-ups. They had exercises. They had yoga. They had all these different things that the kids could click on and then go and do the exercises on the virtual move-a-thon. And it kept the kids active and busy, and they loved it. So I was so inspired with her work that I made my own. And what this is my office, and here I am. That's my little Bitmoji. And we have all of these manipulatives that I value and I use in my teaching, and I wanted them to have a chance to click on them and experience them and work with them. So I put together this, and this is an interactive slide. So all of them are connected to virtual manipulatives. So just in closing, what I wanted to just stress is keep on, and you could, keep on sharing who you are. I think it's important, if you value what you value, you share who that is, so that the candidates can know who you are and what you think. And if you value hands-on learning, which I do, then I make sure that I do some hands-on learning in my small group meetings when I meet with them. We do mindfulness because we think it's important, and every meeting has a part of mindfulness. If I think about formative assessment as being valuable, I want to use those kinds of tools with them, because I don't want them just to think about summative assessment as a way of thinking about children. The feedback I give, I try to make it genuine. And we want to do interesting projects together. We want to have fun and play games together. And so I model with them what I hope they will actually do with their students. So the Friday seminars that we have after they had their 4 days of work with their children, I think give them the boost to do the next thing with them. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. I think it'll be easier if I share my screen, because so Laura, if you go to the next screen, I put a link in here for everybody once we share the slideshow with everybody, but I think for this, because I tried to put my slides in it and the formatting didn't work out. So I'm going to share my screen with the slideshow.
Brilliant.
I think that, yes. So then you don't have to click everything. Okay. Oh, but can you enable participant screen sharing, whoever is the host? I think that's Virginia.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay, awesome. Let me try again. Yes, I do want to stop the other people. Okay. Okay, let me get in present mode. So when I was talking to the other presenters about this, I've taught 6th grade for about 20 years. And I was going into this presentation in the sense of how do we build community through distance learning, still continuing the community that we've established already in our classroom. And when I started thinking about this in terms of supervisors and your candidates, I thought about, well, you can totally do this with your candidates too. All these things that I'm going to talk about are things that you are able to modify, to alter a little bit, and there doesn't need to be that much altering to make this activity, a ritual, a routine that you could do with your candidates on a daily basis, on a weekly, if you meet with them in a supervisor meeting once a week or whatever. So I'm going to just talk about what we do in class, and it's something that adults participate in too. So it's students, adults, whoever's in the classroom when we do this. And then you can also make it work for you with your candidates. So we do daily check-ins in my class. And I post this, we have an interactive whiteboard, so I have it projected on the whiteboard. And I post this every morning. We have about 20 minutes before the kids have to go off to science. I teach in an elementary school, but they do have pull-out science. And we do our daily routines for about 20 minutes. We're really lucky to have that time. And I fought for that time, actually. So we just sit and we're mindful. We think about our day. We think about what's going on in our lives that morning and what's been happening, like what's been going on in our lives that morning and how that might affect the rest of our day, how that might affect our learning that day, our interactions with our fellow classmates and our peers and the school community in general. Like we just think about, okay, what's going on? How can we make it so that we're here ready to learn? And maybe we're not ready to learn that day. Maybe we're having a really, really hard time. So in class, we do this and we think about also making a statement of positive intent. So and I'm going to show you a picture in just a minute of what we do, but they have an individual whiteboard and they think of a number between 0 and 5, and it can be a negative number. It can be like a million too. But 0 to 5 is a spectrum. Think about 0 is like, things are not going well that day. Things are not going the way you want. You're having a really hard time. 3 is like, oh, that's fine. 3 is good. 3 is like, you're totally having a fine time. 5 is things are really good and you are able, if you are a 5, you're having a good day, you are able to be there for other people if they need you. So this is a picture of my kids doing the morning check-in on their whiteboards. And this was taken during state testing times when the desks were all kind of messed up. But usually we're in table groups and the kids rotate their boards around. And this is all very quiet, silent, mindful observation of how is our class doing right now? How are we as a community feeling? And we look around and I'm the one, I have student helpers who help with this process and they're up at the front and they are going through the daily routine, and what they say is like, okay, turn your whiteboards a little bit, hold them up, be quiet, look around. And after they do some active observation and listening, adults, I always do this too. I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. Anyone who wants to can volunteer to share how they're doing. And I respond if somebody says, today I'm feeling like a 1 because I got in a fight with my mom and I woke up late and I'm feeling really stressed out. And I'm like, yeah, that's really hard. And I totally, so I model empathy and interest. It's not a time for show and tell, but instead a way of having an opportunity to tell our community what's going on, because we're all in it together and everyone's reality affects everybody else in the room. So just like if you're having a really hard day because you're totally stressed out, or your cat died, or your parents were fighting, or you got in an argument with your sister, you can't find your shoe, or you didn't wear your socks, like whatever it is that totally makes us messed up in the morning, that's going to affect everybody in the room if you're not able to settle down from that. And vice versa, if you're having a great day, you can help other people. And it's not an obligation or responsibility, it's just there's an opportunity there. So these are some of my check-ins that I had over the last few years. So everybody writes them down for all to see and hear, and for the walls of our classroom to hold. And we talk about that, like we're saying them or sharing them so that it's in our classroom. This is what we are going through right now, every day. And it doesn't mean that things can't change that day. We talk about, well, can you help somebody else later on? Like if you're a 5, can you help somebody else? So these are some of mine. And this slide deck is shared with you. So if you want to read a little bit more about what I've been writing in the comments. This is something that we talk a lot about is if you're a lower number, what can you do to make it better? If you can, if it's possible for you to make it better. Sometimes it's not possible. If you have a higher number, what can you do to keep it a higher number? And the kids reflect on that. And the last question is, do you need help from anyone? And this is a really big deal because, and again, it leads to conversation of confidentiality. And if somebody is having a hard time because, maybe they say, well, I'm feeling like a negative 500 because my mom and dad are fighting again, and da-da-da. And so I'm like, modeling that way of being empathetic by saying, let's talk about that at recess time. I know it's really, really hard. And so then you can help them recognize like, well, you might need some help, and it might be that I can help you as your teacher, or maybe you can go to the counselor, or just the secretary. The attendance secretary is a beloved resource for a lot of kids. And so I'm just like, oh, just go check in with Michelle at the office. So these things right here are just questions that we do after we do our daily check-in. And what I did for distance learning is that I can't give up the check-in. This is a really important thing, especially more important during distance learning and crisis learning, you know. So I have a link here to the Google form, which I'll show you. But let me see. When we did our online class meetings, I changed it a little bit, just like this, but then they wrote their statement of positive intent and their number in the chat. So that was a way for me to recognize, okay, they're here, they're present, I get to see everybody's numbers. Everybody gets to see everybody's numbers because everybody was able to see the chat. And then we could do the same kind of process and see where people were coming from. And it was this, and so this is the Google form, which I did link in one of those slides. So what I had them do is I had them do it every day on their own, or you can do it before the class meeting. And when they did it before the class meeting, I was able to look at them and say, oh, this is where they're coming from that day. So I could maybe touch upon some global issues that they were mentioning, or just altering the day's lessons to take care of some of the little, you know, stuff that we had to do to make sure that everybody was okay. These are some of their responses on the Google form. I had a lot of them. But just like, so take a silent moment to check in with yourself. What are you going to try to do? I work hard on. My statement of positive intent for the day is to concentrate hard and get my work done efficiently. You know, I will work. So this is what's interesting. I'll work hard on talking to my friends. That's a big deal because most of the time the kids on their whiteboards would write, I will work on not talking to my friends, but it's not appropriate. So this right here shows me that they're really needing to socialize. They need to work hard on actually reaching out and communicating and having their videos on and participating in the meetings. And this was a big social emotional thing that was kind of like a red flag. And so that helped me a lot with some of these responses that I saw. And I'm kind of zooming through this. So on the slide deck, there's some links to the Google Forms, which we can look at in just a second. At the end of each day in class, we do a daily reflection. And this, again, is something I do on my own at home. Adults participate in all these. I have lots of para educators in the class. I have, you know, my student teacher. So everybody does both of these processes. And the daily reflection is something that we do. And again, it's voluntary if the kids want to share, but they all want to share, which is a wonderful thing. So usually I have to pick sticks. But we talk about, you know,
Amy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are on a really tight schedule. Yeah, so we'll have to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, sure.
Review the rest. It's wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No problem. I don't have a clock, so I'm in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I was looking at building community with families. I taught in Oakland. I'm a math teacher from Oakland for 10 years. And then currently I'm a dean of students at my school. And my focus largely has been on working with families, especially in this really strange time. And this coming school year shifts greatly how we look at family engagement and engaging with families in general. You know, there's no bake sales for them to come up to. There's no like hall monitoring, right? So it's very different. And so how we communicate with families, I broke it into 3 different ways. So one was communicating consistently. Parents really want to give their feedback and share what their concerns are, what their goals are, and they want to know how they can support each other and support the school and the students. So surveys, quick Google form surveys are a really great way to assess that, and it aggregates the data for you. A newsletter or a homepage for a school website is really helpful. So it's a place to share resources, to give updates on what's happening at your site, what's happening with your students, what's happening with your teachers. So they always feel like they're in the know, and they're not kind of twisting in the wind, waiting to hear what's happening. And then town halls and forums. So we've done this when we had our first, like, hey, this is what we're going to do this year with distance learning, and having those pretty regularly so that you can get a large group of parents together. They can see each other. They can see admin and any teachers that are coming to the town halls. So I can hear any large kind of information shares. The websites are great, but parents really, I found, enjoy seeing the faces and asking questions when they have them in those spaces. So next slide. Thank you. Also meeting the parents where they are, similar to your candidates to students, right? figuring out what's happening for their lives. So home visits, we have 2 of these protocols in the resource that's going to be shared at the end of the slideshow. But doing, you know, a video call with parents, either on Zoom and FaceTime or however you video call with them, to learn really like where are students working, right? And so I share this with my candidates in an effort to, because I knew last year we had a lot of teachers frustrated that their students weren't doing work, and we did a home visit and saw like, oh, well, this student is working in a room with 3 other kids. They don't really have a space to work. They're working on their bed in a corner. It allows, one, for more compassion and empathy for that student. And then it helps educators, right, us as educators, figure out how we can support those families and those students to do work, right? And what are we assigning, or what are we asking our candidates to assign and work on that requires a desk and requires a super quiet space. And I found that parents really appreciate the home visit, so they can kind of share their world and problem solve with you. And then Zoom and distance learning troubleshooting sessions. So a lot of, it's okay. A lot of, this is new for everybody. And so it is okay. It is okay. A lot of us are figuring out on the fly what's happening with Zoom. We know it, you know, backwards and forwards almost, because we need to use it every day. Whereas parents aren't really sure what's going on all the time if they're not using it for their own work. And so providing opportunities for parents to come in to learn what's happening in the interface, to know what they should be seeing if they peek over their child's shoulder and they see like, oh, there's only you on the screen. Is there anybody else in the session? What's going on? So anything that can kind of support them in that. And then small group schedule walkthroughs, 2 to 3 families at a time, to kind of walk them through whatever the schedule the candidate's school is going through, so they can understand and they can predict when their student should be working and should be busy, and not taking everything at face value. And so they know what's going on, because it's very different, it's very new, and many of families that we learned from in our exit surveys found that they just didn't know when their students should be doing things, and they didn't know what those things should look like. So if schools had assigned mindfulness practices and their child is playing video games, they don't understand if that's a mindfulness practice or their child is just slacking off. So understanding what the schedule is for them is huge. And then last slide. And then establishing your availability, really as a supervisor and as a candidate for students, just availability of information. Families are seeing, you know, the CNN alerts, they're seeing the updates on their social media, they're seeing the information that we're seeing, and they want to know, you know, where we get our information from, how are we deciding when to bring students back in, how are we figuring out what's safe. And so having a place where they can learn where we're getting our data from, and how we're making decisions, and what, you know, education sources are we looking at to make sure we're doing things that are best for their families and the students. Any resources that allow them to do supplementary work or just enjoy their time with their child, right? So in whatever area you're in, if you have, you know, a resource or a blog that says like, oh, this park is open this weekend, and this place is great for hikes, and this place is great for, you know, small families to go and play sports or whatever, sharing those resources with families so they can also access them. If there's any materials they need for their home, sharing that with them, and just options for families to really engage in the work that you're doing with them, because they understand, and to Laura's point earlier about being real, like they understand that we're all learning at the same time, and many of our candidates and we are parents, and so they understand that we're trying to make this work also. And then availability of your time, right? And so what I've been talking to my candidates about is really like, how connected do you want to be with your families? How available do you want to be for them? So share your email. If your school has a contact portal like Jupiter Grades or Schoology or something like that, is that the only interface? Are you comfortable giving out your phone number for cell phone, for text messages and phone calls? I found that that's different depending on the person, but that's okay. But understanding like what your availability is, because this is, you know, depending on where you get your news, it's either a very traumatizing time or a time that's not that crazy. And so making sure you're available for families when they need you.
I'll just jump in here really quickly. So we've created a doc that we are trying to put in different resources for people, and I think we'll continue to add to, that you can share hopefully with your candidates as well as other people who might not have been able to participate during the conference. And then Virginia, we did have a couple questions.
And then maybe we can, and also if you have questions for the panel, you could ask those. Maybe we just manage this through the chat feature. should we maybe go back to seeing everybody? If you could stop sharing. Has everybody seen the questions? How do you establish a relationship of trust with your candidates? And what advice would you give a new supervisor about initial communications with candidates?
I'll copy and paste these in the chat. How about
Okay,
that?
thank you. Yeah. And then also we can just take people who are also raising their hands because it's only a group of 28. So.
I have a question for Derek, if that would be okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I was curious, Derek, one of the things you were talking about were home visits that might have taken place, and that as the result of like a home visit that you may have seen a child in like a bedroom, maybe like not having quite the workspace, you know, and knowing that definitely creates empathy, which is so important, you know, at all times. But then is there anything that, I guess I'm curious how you might then communicate with the parents to create more of that learning environment for that student, or how you proceeded forward in that delicate situation?
Yeah, I can say in my experience, it's different for every family. I've had it with families, with students that are taking care of multiple siblings, where they're between homes and things like that. And 99% of the time, we find a space where it can work out. So it's been, oh, they can work at, you know, their aunt's house, which, you know, in my COVID fear brain is a terrible idea. But I'm like, okay, if that works for you and you're safe, you can do that. Or they can sit at the kitchen table during this time, or I can make them kick all of their siblings out of the room and they can work during these hours, which is where the schedule really helps. Because often I found that in those situations where families were like, well, they have no space to work on this, they actually didn't know when their child should have been working, to figure out when they needed to find the space, if that makes sense. Because some of it, you're like navigating trust issues with, you know, parents and their kids and things like that. And that's, you know, a whole nother level. But I think we always got to a point where we could figure out a time and a space. They just need to know, like, okay, do they need 12 to 2? I can give them 12 to 2 in their room and like take the other kids out somewhere else, or I can give them 4 to 5 and then 2 to 3. And so it was really kind of navigating a schedule with them in spaces. But yeah, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was the first couple of home visits I did personally were tough, because they were in early March or late March, when, you know, the world was on fire. And so working that out was tough, but it definitely can happen. I would say, yeah, I'd say that. I'd say there's always, you know, space in a room for a certain amount of hours. It's not necessarily like they don't have space for it, but they don't have time to be in the space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And one of the things that you definitely just talked about, which I feel like was definitely one of your slides, was just the importance of proactively creating that relationship with the families, so that when those, you know, delicate issues come up, that you have that foundation that you've built.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes it much easier. No problem.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you.
Other questions for the panel or responses to the questions? Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of the presenters. They all touched on a lot of great things. And just to piggyback on what Jennifer and Derek were just speaking of, as a supervisor coming in, you know, we only are going in to sit on these lessons and into their community just a few times during the semester. And so it was interesting because there's such an equity issue, as you're mentioning, between homes. Some homes, there were 3 to 4 kids, you know, in the same space. Others had one child had his own bedroom and so forth. So the question I would have as a supervisor is how to also build that community so that we can support the student teacher as well. I had to be introduced each time because the teacher was kind of joking, like, so this stranger that you see on the screen, you know, the supervisor as itself, we're not there as the mentor teacher all the time. We're not there as a student teacher constantly. And so what suggestions do you have? Maybe that goes back to Anne, because Anne had spoken about small groups, to have the supervisor feel in this distance learning to be part of that community more. You know, I think my frustration as a new supervisor is I would be doing that constantly as a teacher on a daily basis, working with them, but as a supervisor popping in to support the mentor, I mean, to support the candidate, and also kind of juggle along the mentor-teacher schedule, you know, of allowing you to be there. What suggestions do you have, you know, any of the presenters that you have seen as a supervisor that's really worked? Because we're in a really different role than the teacher that's there on a daily basis. Or maybe Anne can share about the small group piece that she was meeting with small groups of the candidates. But I found with the distance learning, we were kind of isolated.
I meet with my small group once a week. And so we have a chance to talk and share. And I don't think my influence in the classroom is very much felt, except that they know I'm there to watch the teacher, you know, the student teacher. I would say I try to share with the teacher candidates what they could do. And we talk problem solve. So if they have a rose and a thorn to share about something that's going on in their classroom, then we kind of all chime in and try to support them with ideas that they could use. Maybe they want to send a postcard to this kid. Maybe they want to, you know, do something different. So we try to problem solve a little bit remotely from the classroom.
We have time for a couple more questions for the panel, or responses to the questions that they posed. You could just physically raise hands if you have a question. Oh, Allison?
Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you for all of that. I'm really inspired and excited to get going on some of these activities. And I have a question for Derek as well, and honestly for everybody. But to start with Derek, my question is, I'm sort of struggling with. I do the secondary language arts supervision at UCSD. And, you know, so that's as young as 6th grade and sometimes up to 12th graders, right? And I think one thing that I'm struggling with is like advice in terms of what level, if any, of parent support should be even expected at all with the work that we assign, because normally, I mean, under in-person learning, I've always, as a teacher, tried to only send homework home that is mostly independent practice, finishing up what we started in class. But with less synchronous time on Zoom, it's hard to imagine that that's the only case that's expected of students, you know,
how does it
because we want to push their development as well. So I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, I could say for me that that's a great question. I think I found that I couldn't ask parents to do more working with students just because like a lot of, like, I have my own kid at home. And so I was like, oh man, if I can't help my own child with their stuff, I can't, you know, expect them to do the same thing. And so really I always ask parents just for like help with like motivating their kids and like providing them the space and the time. And then for the students, I asked them, or asked the candidates to ask them to make like study groups with people in their classes, and then to kind of screenshot that they're all together and do like, you know, a funny face or whatever to prove that they're all together and working together. Because yeah, it came where like parents were like, I can't help them, I'm trying to do my own work. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And so kind of making study groups, which in some ways works better because you don't have to worry about students traveling to each other's houses, right? They just have Zoom and they can do it on their screens. And so having students work together in that way. I often had odd hours that I could support students. And so like random, like 5 to 6 o'clock hours. And so I was like, hey, I have a free pocket if anybody wants to work with me. And I send it out on the Google Classroom and then kids would pop in. And so that worked sometime. But yeah, that's definitely been a challenge. And I'd say at my school, we had to dial back, I think, some of the work that we gave out, and kind of shift what our focus was on it, what we're trying to ask students to learn. And so that's how I'd say to that,
Okay.
but it's still.
I'm afraid our session has come to a close. I really want to thank all of the presenters. I think so many ideas were shared, and it's so nice to think about, you know, really supporting our candidates emotionally and how they're going to support families and students, and just how that is all a connected process, right? Everybody is part of that supportive community. So thank you so much, and thank you for sharing resources, and we look forward to looking into that folder some more. So thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And I posted